Colby, if you'll lead us in our pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Blackwell,
Here.
Member Martini,
Here.
Member Gilder,
Here.
Member Fletcher,
Here.
Member Loading,
Here.
Member Irvin.
Here.
Thank you.
The first item on our agenda is the approval of our minutes for December the 1st, 2022. Are there any corrections, or do I have a motion for approval?
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Loading, is that correct? Member Loading, and from Member Matheny, our second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And it so carries. The next item that I have is not on the agenda, but I'd like to recognize one of our volunteer members who has been, in my opinion, an incredible asset to our CRA. He has served faithfully. He has kind of been a leader on some of the issues that kind of has helped all of us to think differently. And I certainly appreciate all that Dwight Loading has done, and we'd like to just give him a certificate of appreciation and a little gift.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is new business. And first of all, we have presentation. That is it, doesn't it? I'm sorry. The second item is the appointment of our CRA Board Vice Chair. Do I have any nominations? Do I have a volunteer?
I'll nominate Colby Urban. We'll keep the consistency with the other boards.
All right, do we have any other nominations? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And there is no opposition, and congratulations, Mr. Urban.
Thank you.
One more little job for you. Thank you.
Pile it on.
Brings us to item number C, resolution number 2022-006 CR, the funding balance allocation in regard to the downtown parking.
Good evening, Antoinette Forbes, Economic Development Director. This item is resolution number 2022-006CR. It is the resolution that would reallocate the fund balance from previous year, September 30, 2022, for a project according to what Florida statutes that any of the fund balance needs to be designated for a specific project. We want to allocate this for downtown parking in conjunction with the previous balance. This amount is $679,715.
Is there any discussion? Member Matheny.
Thank you. Do you have an update on the parking garage?
We do. So we did receive the proposed scope of work. It's being reviewed by staff, by many departments as of last week. We've also presented the proposed scope to our Economic Development Advisory Committee to get their comments as well. We're waiting to receive comments both from that committee as well as from staff by next week. And once that scope is finalized, we intend then to take it through the solicitation process through procurement.
And this scope of work is to do what?
The scope of work, according to what was authorized by the board, is to have the collective parcels that surround the city hall to be put in as a public-private partnership project where we are soliciting developers to do public parking at a minimum of, we're proposing 75 spaces, but for also to be mixed use.
So, city manager, I didn't realize we picked the location. We definitively picked the location? Because I know at one point we had a couple different options. I thought part of the analysis was going to be looking at the locations to see which ones are the best
I understood that we presented the options, and then I thought we were given direction to proceed with north of 10th Street.
Okay. Can you just
Originally,
double check that?
yeah. Originally, we had presented on the south side of 10th Street on the lot behind the hotel.
Right, I remember there was options, but I was thinking it was going to be evaluated still. Like, which one is
Okay.
better and which one. I know some initial direction from the city was a lot of restrictions on the way the parking garage was gonna be designed. It was only gonna be this and only gonna be that, and then we kind of questioned why we were when they gave us the options, like why there were so many restrictions given, like no parking on the ramp and you can't do this and you have to do that, like, and it kind of skewed. I guess just, I want to just make sure we,
Well, I think that was
Voted
when
on it.
staff was trying to design it, and instead we're moving forward with the public-private partnership. So what we're doing is we're identifying the pieces of property, and we're saying what we would like to see. Now the private world should come back and give us their proposals for that property and tell us what they would be willing to do on that property. We have also, as part of it, expanded it to include the houses on Massachusetts Avenue extending to 9th Street, which were always intended to be torn down as future expansion of City Hall. So we put that as part of the potential for somebody to give us their options. And then we were going to have a committee review the proposals and then bring that forward for a final decision.
okay.
Was there anything I missed on that?
You said it all.
Okay.
I just want to double check that and just make sure.
Okay.
Because I feel like maybe we didn't quite get to the conclusion, but maybe we did.
So would the board like, before we just move forward and put it out on the street, the board wants us to bring it to the next CRA meeting for you guys to finalize that scope? We can verify at that same time that if we had received direction, make sure you're comfortable with what we're proposing to put out on the street?
I personally would like that because we have 2 new members and the mayor and I will be gone by the time this design's done, so.
Okay. I think we can plan on that for the
I think
next.
that would be helpful, so if you'll plan on doing that then.
Yeah,
Are
2
there any
months.
objections? No, thank you. Would,
Oh, and we can have a meeting before 2 months if that messes your schedule up. I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
would anyone in the audience like to comment on this item? I assume I need a motion for the reallocation of these funds, is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
Could I have a motion? I'm sorry, Mr. Gilbert, I overlooked your light. Did you want
Well,
to
that's
ask
okay.
a
And
question?
I think Councilmember answered it best, that Councilperson Fletcher and I were not here prior, so just to get an overlook. But I don't want to slow this down, so I don't want to keep pushing it back to next meeting. So Councilwoman Matheny said, hey, can we do something in between? I would love to see that, because the last thing we want to do is slow this down. I think this is a great project for the city. I think it's necessary for the city's growth. So if we could look at that without slowing the process down and just updating all of us. And you said how many parking spots? And I apologize for not knowing.
Just 75?
We are proposing a minimum of 75 public parking spaces.
Okay, because with private partnerships, I've seen parking structures and garages be very fruitful in revenues for both the private and the public, but is 75 undershooting what our projects are in our master plan? And I don't know, so please forgive me to ask these questions, but 75 seems to be kind of small. But again, I don't know, maybe that's some formula you came up with that works well to take the crowding out of the parking, so thank you.
Would the board like for us to just go ahead and plan on Thursday, May 4th as the next CRA meeting, and we can bring the scope, and maybe we can provide you with that previous presentation that we had from our consultant about kind of the vision of the property?
Okay. Again, I'm not speaking for Councilman Fletcher, but if we get it quicker, better, and get it moving, because I truly think, being a citizen, that is going to benefit the city and bring people.
Thank you. You have anything else?
No, sir, thank you.
Member Loading.
Yeah, I just wanted to, 75, as Member Gilbert mentioned, when I heard 75, I thought that was light, because I don't know how many parking spots you know, without all this construction going on, I don't know how many were here before, but it just seems like 75 is light, a light number. That's what I'm taking from that, because but I don't know how many was here before, though, so. And I know you have this whole corner out here where some park also, so I guess maybe if you could have that number, like, what was it before, also, that would help shed light on that, the number 75 for us. And as the city grows and as, you know, parking for the city employees, correct? That's what I'm assuming?
Well, it was public parking.
Okay.
So during the day, it could be City Hall, at night, it could be whatever activity is
Okay, and then
happening downtown.
And after that point, then it would become paid parking? I mean, after the 75?
Well, we were reserving that we needed to have 75
Oh,
available
gotcha.
for the public. That was a minimum, and then whatever uses that they're putting in would also generate a need for additional parking.
Okay,
Okay,
So if,
all right.
makes more sense.
and
Remember
that's
the-
kind of where we just need to see their proposals, you know,
Okay.
so we can pick what we think is best.
Member Matheny?
Thank you. That's what I was gonna say too. I was like, we did a parking study at one point where they came and said, this is how many spaces we're short, and I know it was way more than 75. And then if you put the parking garage on that footprint, you're probably wiping out 75 spaces. So you're gonna end up with like a net zero. So, yeah, it'd just be great to like refresh before we put it onto the street, and I'm good with that date.
Member Loading? You have anything else?
Sorry.
We still have the resolution before us for the reallocation of the funding balance.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Member Matheny, second from, who did I miss? I got the motion. Who do I have a second?
Oh, it's Member Gilbert.
Sure, second, please.
Pay attention, Mr.
I
Gilbert.
know I said it twice, I'm sorry.
We have a second from Member Gilbert. Can we just do a vote affirmation on
Yes,
this?
sir.
All of those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And it carries unanimously. The next item is our CRA 101 board training.
Correct. So I think it's been about 2 years, because it was during COVID that we had the last CRA 101 training. We've had several new members on our CRA board since then. So we've invited RMA to come back. They did the initial training to give you just some kind of grassroots fundamentals about the CRA and how it differentiates from a city council member role, also kind of the what you can and cannot do and how the funding is to be used. So it'll be a overview, not meant to be in its entirety, but again, give you some conceptual knowledge about it. So we have Adrienne Esteban here. She's the project manager from RMA.
Thank you. Could you make sure to have the mic turned up so everyone can hear well, please, especially some of us who have hearing aids?
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good evening,
Mayor,
everyone.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Because we do have some citizens here, can we potentially request to have the VFW project closeout report?
That'll be fine. We are going to move to accommodate our citizens here to the VF project closeout report.
You're welcome to stay.
Absolutely.
Well, good evening, guys. By way of introduction, those who don't know me yet, I'm Rafael de Jesus. I'm the commander of our post here in town. And I just want to give you an update of the project that the CRA supported for our renovation of the hall. So as you guys know, in 2021, we started the idea of renovating our community hall, which was in bad shape. And through the CRA and the city council, we will receive a grant of $155,000 for the project. It was so what we've done so far with those funds is we got a new roof, new metal roof, a new brick out. The outside was all done in brick, and a new entryway. That's pretty much the bulk of the cost of the whole project. So far, we probably spent about $180,000 altogether. So because of that, we will be able to continue supporting our community. We are proud of doing that. We still got the business group meeting in our location. We have the Boys and Girls Scout meetings, the Rotary Club sometimes, and we will continue to do that free of charge. Thanks to the city helping us out with that. As you guys know, we also talk about renaming the hall, so we're going to rename it Soldier City, and it's kind of cheesy, let me know. We're still looking for opinions on that, but we want to name it Soldier City Veterans Hall. That's the name that our membership kind of come up with, but we're still open to suggestions if you guys think of something better that maybe fits
I
with
like
the
it.
city.
I like
So,
it.
Yeah, you guys like it. So we're going to come up with a day for the renaming ceremony, and hopefully we see some of you guys there. And I will let, Mr. Blackwell or Veronica know. But I want to give a special thanks to, they're not here today, but Bob Didrich, John Davis, former Mayor Bill Sturgeon, Veronica, and especially Mrs. Ford. I bother her so much with this project. And they'll be happy they don't have to get out on the phone call after hours from me. So with that being said, if any questions in regards to where the funds went or anything like that, let me know.
Councilmember Matheny.
I'm excited for it. I think it looks great. It
Yeah.
looks really, really amazing. My one request would be do the renaming ceremony, not in the middle, like 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, because that's hard for me to make. But, yeah, I think it looks great. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, you guys, thank you for the support that you're giving us, and we will try to do our best to make us proud, to make you guys proud that you're supporting us.
Member Gilbert.
One thing we are proud, or I am, for serving, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's an honorable thing that you're doing, and love having veterans right downtown, because it's, as you know, it's probably passing by where there's less and less, because when I was growing up, there were a lot more than there are now, so thanks. But my one question is, that rental hall, I went in there, and the police department sometimes has the meetings there.
Yes.
And do you use that as a revenue source?
No, so you guys, and that's one of the things I want to let the city know. We don't do Monday all the way to Thursday. We call it non-revenue days. So anything that is community-based, if you call us, I have a meeting, I have whatever, it's free of charge. We do reserve Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as revenue days, because that's the days that we rent it out for birthdays, or whatever the case may be. But, I mean, we are happy to have any activity that involves the community.
I do not know if this will work or not, but we're in a dilemma here with our food pantry for a temporary place.
Yep.
And I didn't know if that may be a solution to coordinate that for a temporary times. That's the reason I was asking. If that's something that may fit the project in this temporary time as a food pantry. So maybe that's a discussion for later on, but that's where my head went. It's a large place, a lot of large parking, in and out's good. It wouldn't be disruptive to the city at all for them to go through there. So that was all I was asking, is that something we may look at, city manager, to do for a temporary basis till we find them
So
permanent home?
there's a list, they have a recommendation, I just haven't had a chance to sit down with them, but when I do sit down with them, I will ask about that, if that would somehow be something to work together
Yeah.
on.
Thank you, Manager, and thank you, sir, again, for all you do. We certainly appreciate it. I know I do personally.
We appreciate it. We are glad to be here in downtown, and we are doing our best to keep it going, so.
Member Matheny.
One last thing, you can't retire, even though the project's done,
Yeah,
you can't retire.
yeah, so today's election, so I have to go out of here.
Because I know he said he was gonna make it through the building and then he was gonna retire.
Yeah,
but
so they can be extra year because
I
we're
put it
building,
in, I put
so,
it into the,
yeah.
atmosphere, you can't.
But I mean, it's been awesome to see it from what it was to what it is now. If you guys haven't been to the building, it's amazing, it's great. And so you guys know, we are the #1 post in Florida for membership.
Wow.
So that's another thing. And it's not because of me. I mean, we're growing. I mean, we have an unfair advantage. I mean, we get people every day, but we are #1 in the state, so, all right?
Member Irvin.
I just wanted to thank you and everybody at the VFW. That looks great in our downtown. It's a beautiful, it just fits with everything that we're doing down there, and very excited for the future and excited to check it out and be there for the naming ceremony. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I say ditto to all of that.
Oh, amen. Thank
Excellent.
you.
It's so good to see the facelift. It turned out great. Anyone else? Then thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. If you don't mind, I have to run. I don't want to be rude for that.
You go right ahead and run.
Good luck.
How fast are you?
You're going to be disappointed that you missed this exciting meeting. All right, with that, we'll go back to our item D, our CRA board training. Adrienne, it's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. There we go. Okay, once again, my name is Adrienne Esteban. I'm a senior project manager with RMA. The firm has principals of Kim Briesmeister, and Chris Brown, who have been CRA directors of some of the largest CRAs in Florida, including Hollywood, Delray Beach, West Palm Beach, and Fort Lauderdale. So I was trained by them. So we're just going to go over, like Antoinette said, an overview of the CRA do's and don'ts and, the purpose of them. So the CRA is a dependent special district, meaning it doesn't create its own taxes, that has found to be affected by slum and blight, which are terms defined in the state statute. They're not meant to be derogatory towards a city, but in any case, that's what it's needed to be able to have a community redevelopment agency. So future increases in property values are set aside to support economic development projects and programs to eradicate that slum and blight. The main purpose is to benefit the entire community by building wealth and eliminating the blight and addressing the quality and inclusiveness of growth. So there are over 220 CRAs in Florida. They're administered by a community redevelopment agency with the 5 to 7 board, which is you all, directing the agency in what programs to do. They can be local government officials like you all, or they can be individuals appointed by the local government. There can be multiple CRA districts, but there's generally one CRA board. However, usually each district has its own trust fund and plans. And then CRAs are authorized by Chapter 163, Part 3 of the Florida statutes. So some examples of projects that CRAs can do include streetscapes, which you all have done your own here in St. Cloud. But even big cities like West Palm Beach, and these are some pictures from there, they continually reinvent themselves. So now they're in West Palm Beach, they've installed a curbless system of streetscape improvement. So once you're done, sometimes you'll have to redo it even in, 10, 15 years. Redevelopment incentives like facade improvements. This is an example in Pompano Beach. And then even public-private partnerships, which is what we were talking about, or what you all were talking about earlier. This is a mixed-use development in Fort Lauderdale with commercial space on the ground floor. So in 2019, there were some statutory updates really to rein in, and some of the new regulations are a little bit more restrictive. I won't go through all of these, but it does include ethics training for all CRA board members, requires the same procurement procedures. It restricts some of the CRA terms. You could still do it, but your taxing authorities don't necessarily have to provide funding like they do right now. So just be aware of that there were some changes in 2019. There are reporting requirements, including an annual audit, annual fees, and updates to the Office of the Special District, comprehensive annual financial report, an annual report, which is due on at the end of March, and then your annual budget, which shows how you're going to be paying for all of the projects and programs that you have identified. You do want to make sure all your reports, plans, budgets, maps, and your board contact information is on the CRA website. One of the other important things to include in your website is the CRA plan. So this is a document that guides what the CRA is going to do over their life. Any project or program that the CRA wishes to complete must be outlined in the CRA plan, or also known as Community Redevelopment Plan. Your plan is your blueprint, how you're going to accomplish your goals of eliminating the slum and blight. But it is a living document that can be updated to meet the changing needs within the CRA as the market changes, as your community conditions change. You can also update your plan. The CRA trust fund can only be used on activities authorized by the redevelopment plan in your annual budget. So your trust fund is the mechanism that you have to pay for things. The fiscal year for all CRAs is October 1st through September 30th. And as you all did today, any funds left over in the trust fund on the last day of the fiscal year have to have either be redirected to another project or used to reduce indebtedness. There's some others, but they pretty much all have to do with debt or being allocated to a new project. The TIF provides revenue to the trust fund. That's your increase in taxes. So how that works is there's a base year established, so that's your beginning year, and as the taxes increases, the CRA receives a portion of that increase as their budget. So that's how you get your budget. So the more you're investing and the more the tax base is growing, the more your budget grows. Calculating the TIF difference in value between the ad valorem revenues of all of taxable properties in the CRA this year and the year the CRA was created is how you get that difference. So one thing we typically like to promote is leveraging the TIF. So this a lot of times is through public-private partnerships or incentive programs where you're promoting the private sector activity in the area by them investing as well. This is an example of a multifamily project in another city, but you can see the effects of, the CRA gave a little bit, but then the TIF is going to grow exponentially. Typically, this leads to improved property values, comprehensive planning for the developer's investment, and agreements that can outlast election cycles. So use of funds. As part of the 2019 legislative changes, there were certain changes that were made to the statute where funds could be had to be in the annual budget and only for the purposes specified in the statute, this being administrative types of activities, planning, acquisition, the clearance of or preparation for sites, repayment of indebtedness, all expenses, affordable housing, community policing innovations, and then expenses that are necessary to exercise the powers. Those are a little bit more flexible to give you a little more leeway, but this year that 2019 change did change it to that. It's only, instead of, it used to say including and up to. But what CRAs cannot fund include construction or expansion of administrative buildings, publicly owned capital improvements if they're in your CIE plan and haven't been removed for 3 years, general government operating expenses, like police, but you can do what they call community policing innovations. Activities that aren't covered in the plan and aren't in your budget, payment for service as a CRA board member, and then any project or program outside of the CRA. So typically, CRAs will have to have an annual budget. We actually worked on a strategic finance plan for you all that establishes a 5-year budget to give you not just the year, because sometimes you're not thinking ahead for a couple of years. So this 5-year budget gives you a little bit more flexibility in figuring out what projects you want to accomplish in that time, and then the funding in order to be able to do that. Another way to fund projects, like bigger projects that you might have, like streetscape projects, may include some kind of debt, including bonds or loans. So that's, very standard for most CRAs. Like I mentioned, this is the strategic finance and implementation plan that we created for you all. And I just wanted to briefly go over, because I know some people weren't here the last time we did this, of those types of projects that are in that plan. This includes connectivity and public spaces, like your New York Avenue streetscapes. I know you, Pennsylvania is the next one, or is it completed? Yeah, sorry, I forgot to look at that when on my way in. But I know you have your 10th Street Complete Streets, the Florida Avenue multi-use trail, and then also proposed trails from the county. Another example of a project that we recommended is for 192, making that more of a complete street as well, and then improving your alleyways are other examples of the connectivity in public spaces. Another thing that we noticed is you don't really have a public plaza. I know you have the park to the south of 192, but you don't really have one downtown that's an urban plaza that attracts activity. So we find that some kind of water feature or activities like yoga or events, tends to attract that. We know you have your night market event, but having a plaza is really a good tool for a city to help activate it, especially at night. We also included density in housing. We looked at your existing housing stock. You do have a little bit of multifamily in the downtown, but most of it is the single family. We do recommend that you have more of townhouses and maybe a little bit more mixed use or even accessory dwelling units to increase the options for all socioeconomic classes. You have already started your plant and pay program. It looks like it's going pretty well. Antoinette sent me some examples. And then the other thing that we had recommended was, working on your branding, marketing, and communications. This could be through wayfinding signage, artistic gateway markers, banners with branding, and branding collateral. Our other category is special projects in downtown redevelopment. You had recently completed a hotel feasibility, which stated that the St. Cloud could absorb a hotel if it came to be. And then we also discussed parking as well as expanding your cultural arts offerings. But the main project that we're working on right now has to do with land acquisition and public-private partnerships. In your CRA plan, you had recommended infill for lots, especially in the downtown area, and multi-story buildings. You all, as a board, had already engaged in some land acquisition with the brewery that came in. So to expand on that, what we had done, and I'm going over a little bit of what I think some of you had already heard before, but what we did is we looked at opportunity sites that are city-owned as for potential for development. So you'll see there, those are the sites that the city owns with the numbers on them. And right now, some of the uses are vacant or surface parking lots, but we do think that you're going to be able to look at probably each of these, and you're not going to be able to solve all your parking needs on one, because we think it might be, at first we were thinking you would have a parking garage, but it might be cost prohibitive, and you might have better opportunities if you develop each of these parcels to solve your parking needs with the development on multiple sites. So an example of this is a public-private partnership that we did in Pompano Beach. This is a little bit different because it was one big site. It was a 6-acre site, but it's the same idea probably of what we're looking at for here. So the first things we did is we put together the technical team, similar to what Antoinette was talking about before. We're starting to develop the scope for an RFP and have the city staff look at it, give us, their comments and note, what else is needed. From there, we would put it out, so hopefully developers would respond. And then what they'll be doing is probably telling you what they're going to do, where they're going to do it, and developing what we call a master plan for the area. So in this particular site, there were 8 parcels on 6 acres that were each developed at different times. So it's kind of a similar situation to your city where you have separate sites, and all of these that were actually developed at different times, even though it was on one parcel. And then we had what we call a development agreement to specify the responsibilities and duties of each of the parties, being the city and the developer. So like I was saying, this is the first site that we were looking at. It's about 2.36 acres. And the potential uses are some kind of mixed use for office or residential, but we do encourage that there be some kind of commercial along New York and 10th. So an example of the type of project that you do want to see is at the top. So for this particular parcel that I was talking about in Pompano, the city could have just done a regular parking garage, plain Jane, utilitarian, it serves its purpose, that's it. But they decided to go ahead and make a little bit more of an investment to have more of a designer-looking garage. And what that yielded was getting really quality anchor tenants who invested quite a bit in their own buildings. And then attracting those wanted subtenants being like Kilwins and BurgerFi, because the whole look at the project and the city had invested so much. They also did about a $12 million streetscape project along the beach there as well. They were also able to get a hotel because of that public investment, like I was saying, in the streets and in the garage. Even the hotel upgraded some of its features, included a rooftop. So you all are well on your way because you have, invested or made that public investment in your streets, and now you're looking to do it in the public parking as well. So just an example, for this particular site I was talking about, the parking revenues went from $500,000. Now they did have paid parking, and it's at the beach, so it's a little bit different. But the revenues did increase to over $6 million this past year. And then the property assessed value went from $11 million in 2012 before the construction started to approximately $52 million. So that's a pretty big increase to the tax base there. And then rent revenue also increased. They were only getting $300 a month from someone who was renting surface parking spots to well over $500,000 over in collective rent for fiscal year 22. So that's a similar exercise that we're going to be looking at and helping you all with for your sites that the city owns. Now, they might not all, be as tall as the example I was showing, but just to give you an idea of how that process will work. And then just lastly, like I was saying, even the bigger cities, they're always reinventing themselves. Our principals have actually written the book on CRAs. And one of the main topics, or the first topic in there, is the vision, because that is the most important. We think you got that now with your strategic financing and implementation plan. And now it's really just going to be about communicating and implementing that vision. We think your RFP is a great first start to creating a P3 and starting some development here. So with that, I will end and take any questions you may have.
Member Gilbert.
Yes, thank you very much. Learning on CRAs, I think they have a 60-year shelf life or something like that. They are going to go away, so I don't know if I'm right or wrong with that, but I think we're into it already, right?
Yeah, it depends. For CRAs created after 2002, they have a 40-year life.
40-year, okay.
But before 2002, they have 60 years.
It was 60
yes.
years, so I apologize for not knowing exactly that.
No.
But the benefits of that, and then you talked about hotels and things like that, and I know a P3, and I think I saw that in your demonstration, where one city went in and developed a hotel with a private partner and then sold that partial of the city-owned stuff and made almost $20 million in profit off of CRA money. Is that, maybe I'm wrong with the dollar-wise, but it was a peer. It was one of the meetings I went to for CRA. So there is a development thing that we can do which would actually benefit the city in earning money. Is that, am I wrong?
Well, you're not wrong. For the example that I was talking about, that site is actually still owned by the city.
Okay.
But the hotel has come in and developed a hotel.
Okay.
The city is benefiting because the
Okay.
taxes are increasing, so they get that revenue.
Okay, so
as
that's how it works.
taxes.
So they flagship it, and they still partner with the city to make additional
Right.
revenues. Great way to do it, when, as you know, private and public
Mm-hmm.
partnerships work well because of the development time it takes of private industry versus a public entity.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that, but just a little bit quicker. That's it, I think. I know I asked too many questions, Mayor, but this is an exciting opportunity for us to go to that route, even a pier out some in the waterfront, things like that. We can do that at CRA, and I don't know the exact, you probably do, but a restaurant a pier in a restaurant, which they had in the 40s here, would be another made attractive, could be done with CRA money, correct?
No, because you might be talking about on the lake. The lake is not in the CRA.
Okay, so it's not, okay, thank you. I just need that to be qualified and quantified. And that was how my mind thought, but the hotel thing can be in other entities, right?
Hi, so I just want to clarify, your overarching point is correct. Yes, the city can partner with private developer in order to sell its share or its stake later on.
Okay.
Or I'll give the example of the old Makinson building that the CRA had purchased, did some minor improvements to, and then turned around and sold it to the Parson Group, who ended up adding the extension of which is now Breezes. So that's an example of
Okay.
something that the CRA took, did some improvements to, and then turned around and put it back into the tax base, and then it improved our overall taxable value. I also want to make sure to note something that was mentioned in the presentation, where Adrian did a really great job of talking about how TIF, a traditional TIF, is formed. However, that is not the way St. Cloud's TIF is calculated. I just wanted to be clear about that, but that is a traditional TIF methodology.
Right, okay. Well, thank you. I just see this an opportunity for our growth to partner with the private industries to add taxable dollars to our citizens.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's all I have.
Member Matheny.
Thank you. I wanted to have I don't know if Mr. Manzares looked it up, but just so you know how long our CRA is, it's only another 6 years or something.
I knew that was
Well,
coming, yeah.
It's,
As you know, Antoinette sort of touched on, your CRA is somewhat of a unique animal. I use the term animal fondly. The agreement with the county provides that the CRA shall exist in accordance with law, which probably, based on what's going to, probably gives it a quote-unquote 40-year life. However, the contribution piece for the county tax funding expires in December of 2031.
Yes.
Right, so practically, the funding that helped, the significant funding that funds the CRA will go away in December of 2031.
That's not very far away, and if we want to utilize these dollars, that may be something we think about
We ha-
short-term versus longer-term, because they will go away.
well, we have been before you got on council, and
Okay.
we reached out to the county about trying
Extending
to
it.
extend the CRA, which you can understand it from the county's perspective. All the CRAs, and it's diverting funds from the county, so
Sure.
they do have some qualms about extending it. But I kind of wanted to bring it up with this group. I know that, I think it was Mr. Sturgeon that reached out. It wasn't you, right? It was prior to you?
It was prior, but we were waiting to have what the plan was, and then we're going to approach the county again, because they wanted to know what we wanted to
Exactly
do
what
with an
projects,
extension.
Right, and I'm not opposed to that. It would be great if we could leave it as is for the 6 years, but in the extension, here's our projects. But, yeah, I mean, I think we have projects now, like I'd like to pursue. I don't know how the other council members feel. But that was something Dave Askew brought up, is he was very concerned that we were reaching the end of it and just trying to leverage the dollars. You know, the horizon was shrinking, so.
Member Irvin.
Yeah, to Member Matheny's point, I feel like we're just getting rolling here with the CRA, and I would love to see that momentum keep going and extend that as much as we can. My other question was, you mentioned a public plaza is very important. A couple meetings ago, might have been longer than that, we discussed turning one of the city properties into a public plaza. Has there been any more thought into that, or
Centennial Park,
Centennial Park?
we have been talking about it.
We're working on it.
Great. Yeah, that would be great to see. I think that would help bring together our community and our downtown area, and I think that would definitely add to the area a lot. So awesome.
I'll also let you know, I asked our Parks and Recreation Director, this past year, the Christmas tree moved to Centennial Park. Personally, I loved it there, but I understand why for our traditional Christmas, it's always in front of City Hall, but we had stages there, and I mentioned to her, perhaps there was an opportunity that we can set up the stages for the entire month of December, and people could rent it, and because the families were coming, and maybe some schools could have performances and continue to feed some of the businesses downtown. So she loved that idea. So she's chasing that right now. So we're looking to find ways to activate it even before we may move forward with a final project.
Great.
Thank you very much. It's very enlightening, very helpful, and thank you for that education once again. That brings us, I think, to item B, our CRA annual report.
So one of the things that Adrian mentioned was in the reporting requirements, we were required to submit an annual report by March 31st of every year. We have in fact submitted that. It is posted online. Now that report only actually has to be like a one-page document, but we try to highlight all the things that we're doing, and you can't always highlight those with numbers, which is why we prepare a more comprehensive narrative. So I'm just going to take you through a very brief overview and also try to read this as well. So the CRA has either started or continued several projects, programs, and events throughout the year. One of those projects is the continuation of the Downtown Revitalization Project, Phase 2, which is Pennsylvania Avenue. The CRA contributed, I think, $2.6 million of the $9.2 million project. We also continued with our culinary bicycle tour, and that event was designed in mind with our downtown businesses in mind, which is obviously in the CRA. And so it is to help both visitors and residents really utilize some of the merchants that we have in our downtown. Last year, we had over 100 participants in it. We actually had to break it up into 2 waves in order for our officers to accommodate so many people. We have scheduled it again this year for June and for October. We launched the Veterans Program initiative, and because our moniker is the Soldier City, we wanted to offer some business support to some of our veterans, those that are retired and maybe looking to go into entrepreneurialism, or those that are looking, that currently work for private sector and they just want to start their own business. And so we contracted out with VEI out of Orlando, who have now have about, I think, 2 or 3 different veterans enrolled in the current spring cohort of their academy. Of course, there is the policing agreement that we have, and so I included a very long narrative that basically talks about all of the initiatives that they do, such as bicycle registrations. They attend the downtown business group meetings. They do a lot of these supplemental and enhanced police services that otherwise, if we did not have these specific officers dedicated to the CRA area, they may not be able or have the time to do. That includes CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, where they offer the free consulting service to businesses to figure out ways that they can change or alter their business in ways that are very small monetarily, but will help prevent crime. Another thing I wanted to mention was our Plant, Paint, Pave project. We've done 3 so far last year. The board also awarded $75,000 in its building and site improvement grant to Chapman Snacks, which is where Just the Glazing is housed. So if you pass by, you see they are heavily under construction as we speak. I want to make sure I capture kind of everything because there's a lot, so give me 1 second. We also continued with our Growth World program, which is specifically for our downtown businesses, that offers one-on-one support to help businesses learn how they can pivot post-COVID. A lot of our businesses were still used to kind of the walk-in traffic, or they did not have the online electronic financial transaction capability, and so to help them to do that. And so graduates of that program have seen a net increase of 13% in their overall sales, so we are trying to get our downtown businesses to participate in that. We also continued with our STEPS program, which I forgot what the acronym stands for, but it is our city staff who are volunteering to clean up the downtown for 2 or 3 days a week. Please stand by. And then we also, the police department also completed their, or completed the purchase of their closed-circuit television technology in order to be now installed into the downtown. So that's just kind of a synopsis of some of the things that were going on. I did not include everything, but I wanted to just give you an idea of all the things that the CRA done for this year, and I'm open to any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Antoinette. Brings us to our financial statements.
Good evening, Jeff Cooper, Interim Finance Director. This is the CRA financial statements through the month of February. So you have the revenue sources, the county TIF, as they mentioned. We've received $1,177,157. Actually, a little bit more than we originally budgeted for. So we'll take it. Operating interest, we have $33,701, which is much more than we anticipated because we were in low interest periods, and now we're finally starting to rebound from that. So we're getting some positive inflows there. And the interfund transfer, that's from the general fund, and that's paid on a monthly basis. So far, it's $138,610, but through the course of the year, it'll be $332,663. So as you can see, we've actually to date received all but 100,000 of our projected revenue. So when it's all said and done, we'll be about 100,000 better off than we projected ourselves to be for revenue. Any revenue questions? Pretty
questions?
straightforward. Okay. Expenditures for personnel, the positions that are paid out of there, October through February, $47,132 paid out. The operating expenditures of $223,989. The majority of that is the community policing that is paid out of there. And the grants, we paid out $96,431 and no other not classified uses. So of the budgeted $1,450,078, we actually expended $367,552 to date, and that leaves us $1,082,526. Any questions on expenditures? Anything financial related?
Member Matheny has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So, thank you. So in the capital outlay / grants, we have a balance of 337. Is there anything earmarked for that? Do you know of, city manager or Antoinette? The grant fund, the 337,655. Is there?
I believe in that amount is the $300,000 that was originally intended for the hotel, which is still in limbo. So most of that is related to the hotel's roof.
Because I was just thinking to my fellow CRA members, I just was talking to the city manager about it this week, we were trying to do like an arts program in downtown St. Cloud, and we had asked as a city, like in the building permits that came in for downtown St. Cloud to put a little percentage to do like some art, to come up with art. And then we really had so many caveats in there that really no money came to fruition. So then 3-4 years ago, we said, hey, change it and do building permits. We haven't gotten that updated yet. But I was just thinking, if we had excess funds here, like why don't we do a beautification project in our CRA? You know, is there some area we can go into and do some planting or paving or painting or, you know, put some art installation, do better lights? I don't know, but, you know, do we want to try to find some projects with that? I frankly don't know that the hotel thing is ever going anywhere, and I don't want to, I mean, we gave them a long period of time to work it out. So, anyway, just seeing what everybody else's thoughts were.
Mr. Gilbert.
Yeah, I did just wanted clarification that you said the grant money to the hotel was $300,000 and it was in limbo, and I seriously thought we voted to take that away.
It's not in limbo.
Oh, so it's
We killed it.
It's good to go with other projects we have, right?
We did kill it.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, the board did vote to remove the funding. However, you know, they were still reaching out to council members and reaching out to me. So I have been talking to them, working, you know, trying to get to the point that they had an agreement that I could bring back to the board. I can give you a little bit of an update if you would like right now. I spoke to Albert last week, You know, the building permit had a timeline for the roof to be completed. They have to have inspections by certain dates. So you may have noticed that the scaffolding has been kind of repaired, and they've actually been working on the roof this week. So Albert basically said he didn't have time to finalize the agreement. He was going to move forward, finish the roof, and he was hopeful that he and I could finalize the agreement next week, that he's coming back next week. He says he wants the same agreement that Mr. Sturgeon had originally agreed to, which I think that's been the point of contention all along. I think that's what Dan originally had provided. So, however, anyways, point is, he hasn't been moving forward right now. He had come back and asked for a larger amount, to which I had said to him, I tried to counsel him that the board needed to regain faith, and that the board and the community needed to see action on the hotel before he could ever ask, you know, for more money. So he said he took that to heart, and that was why he's moving forward doing the work that he was doing right now. Originally, he had told me it was going to cost $500,000 for the plaster because it's a historic building. It's something about lime. I don't know. That's not my area. But he's been meeting with people, working with our historic preservation planner, found someone qualified to do the work for half that price. And he always keeps reminding me that the reason that he had to stop on the roof was because the work that was done by the previous contractor, in his opinion, was faulty, and that had he not stopped it, he would have eventually had to rip it up and redo it. So that's my only update for you. So if the board, we're working on our budget right now anyways. So, I mean, we're looking for projects, whether it's this year's budget or next year's budget. If the city council wants to, if the CRA wants to direct me not to meet with him next week, I can go that route. If you want to go ahead and reallocate it, I have tons of ideas on things that we could do downtown, whether it's this year's budget or next.
Well, I'm fine with continuing a conversation, but I think there needs to be a hard stop. And I also don't think we need to negotiate anymore with not the owner. I think the only conversations need to be had with the owner, not someone representing the owner. You know, it needs to be the owner. And I would like to set a drop dead, like you get it worked out and get it signed by in 2 months, or we're moving on with other projects. I mean, I don't know how the rest of the council feels about it.
Member Urban.
I mean, to be honest, I'm beyond frustrated with that project, and I've had conversations with both Mr. Manzares and Ms. Miller. I honestly don't have an appetite to continue negotiating agreements with this. I'm glad that there's some work that's starting to be done, but I hear almost every day from residents, from business owners downtown who are just beyond frustrated with the lack of progress of that building, and it's an eyesore, and our downtown is a nice, it's coming together nicely, a lot of great businesses, a lot of great events, but we have this big 4-story or whatever eyesore now that it's becoming a problem. So that's my view on it.
Member Fletcher.
So the only question that I have regarding the hotel is was the decision for the city manager to go back and negotiate it and then it is okay, or does it have to come back for approval?
It has to come back for approval because the board rescinded that previous.
Right. And then if he's talking about going back to the original deal, wasn't the original deal like it was a huge amount? Wasn't it? Not just the 300,000. Was it the 300,000? Wasn't there a larger? I just want to make sure it was the 300,000 that there were.
That prior with the lot was not with Mr. Sturgeon. He made it clear he wanted the one that was with Mr. Sturgeon.
Okay.
And just to clarify, so the money is still in budget, but the encumbrance has been canceled per your previous decision, so that's why you see $337,000 that's unencumbered at this moment.
Member Gilbert.
Just to go on record, I agree with Councilman Urban. At what point do you stop? And I think we're there. It has suffered. The other businesses have suffered. And I've heard a lot from the other businesses that we're doing great, but it's the elephant in the room. And sometimes you guys just kick the elephant out.
Member Athene.
I'm happy to go with the majority on it.
I do want to just ask one question. We've discussed many times, other solutions, and I know everybody's concerns. I just don't know that there's another option that's going to move forward quickly. And I just, is there very happy to follow the board's direction and stop negotiating if that's the way you go. But do you have another direction for me to go in so that we can get the ultimate goal? Do you have I just don't want to just say, okay, we're done and not continue doing anything.
Member Urban?
Yeah, I don't know. Mr. Manzares might be able to counsel us on this, and this might be a discussion for a city council meeting. Are there any options for the city to start code enforcing the lack of progress on this building, or what options do we have?
Well, right now, they still have a valid permit, so we'd have to look at the permitting issues to decide whether there's a pending code enforcement matter out there. But if it's, as long as it remains a building under active construction, there's limited code enforcement action that you can take. So, because they have started doing some work and the permit is still valid, as I understand.
Yeah, it feels like to me they do a little bit of work just to pacify the city for whatever amount of time, and it'll sit vacant for another year, and it's just, that's the frustrating part. So I'm willing to do anything that, any option legally that the city has to move something along there to get something done, so.
We can certainly try to investigate some of those, any other options that are out there.
Okay.
Member Loading?
My only concern, I mean, you can look at it two ways. I'm disappointed too. I mean, we've like held the owner's hand, or his subordinates or whatever for a long time, but do we want what's there now? If we don't reach out a hand and try to help him along, which we've already tried, but if we don't continue, are we just going to end up with what's there right now? And is he just going to walk away? That's what we have to decide. Is that what you want? I mean, you can say, well, that's what we've been getting, but if he, as the city manager has mentioned, he seems like he's put forth effort now. Will he continue that effort? I mean, I guess, and I would definitely put timeframes on it if we were even entertaining to go back and offer him the 300,000 or whatever. No more though, but I just don't want it to stay like what it is now. Will they take scaffolding down and leave us the building? I mean, I remember seeing a building down in another city down in the center of the state. I can't think. Lake Wales. There was a building down there that sat there for years and years and years and years. We don't want that. So I think we have to make a decision. We have to have a plan. If we're pulling that and we just can't say, okay, no, we don't want to give it to them. I think we need to think hard on this and what is the other options, because it'll sit there, in my opinion.
Well, I certainly like to not pull the trigger too quick here, not when she's at the table talking with him for the first time in a long time. COVID really knocked a lot of people for a loop financially. And before we make a decision right here, hopefully not tonight, to say we end all discussion unless, I think we need to hear back from whatever proposals that he have is still under he's still got a permit. and let's see what he's got. But I'm certainly of the opinion also that if there's not some definitive commitment with deadlines and significant investments that we see are going to happen, then we need to go a whole nother route. To say, hey, enough's enough, but I don't want to pull the trigger too quick, especially when you're actually talking to the person now.
And I am talking to Albert, the owner. He is coming next week.
Right. Mr. Fletcher.
One of my concerns with giving him any more money to be able to move along in this project is when I do business with people in my business, they have to uphold the end of their agreement. And if they don't, I don't, wait and then say, you know what, let me go back and, let's start renegotiating. Maybe they'll do it this time. And then if we can put in all these stipulations on this money. And he has shown that he's done some work. But then if we give him the money with all these stipulations and he doesn't meet them, then the city attorney has to get involved and we have to go fight with, all the subcontractors that he hired, and all of this stuff to be able to recoup the money back again. And then that's my fear regarding this.
I think whatever the rules are for the disbursement of CRA funds need to be adhered to strictly, and not the kind of arrangement that we had with our previous city manager where we were going to, usually people come, they've already made the investment, and they're coming and asking for refunds on money that they've already invested. And that's normally how the CRA operates. And that we have time to see.
So for clarification purposes, previously, we were proposing what we were trying to do was bring forward an agreement for work that he had not done yet, like a standard CRA agreement, and then he would complete the work and then would request reimbursement. So has been what our goal is. I do believe he's hopeful that because he's just moving forward and finishing the work right now, that you would be willing to just reimburse afterwards. No, we haven't agreed to that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the request is that I get next week. But I also just want to point out, he has not had any grants at all yet. Yes, there was the previous lot, but we haven't given him any work for this project yet. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that too. The CRA, that hotel, the CRA has nothing invested in that to this. We've proposed it, but it's never been taken.
Hours and hours and hours and hours
Right.
of time.
That is true. Staff
true.
has spent hours.
If somebody's offering to help me out, I would be the first one to, hey, if they're saying do this, let me do this as fast as humanly possible. Because I'm sure that there's a lot of businesses downtown that would love for us to assist them. And we've done everything that we can to assist them. And I am not in favor of moving forward with it at all.
Well, we have certainly assisted every business that has come and gone through the application process.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
How long has the permit been open and running?
I don't have that information with me. I believe that he has to have work done within the next month.
But,
And that's why he's trying to finish.
How old is this permit? Is it 8 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old? When did this permit start? Because I understand not throwing the baby out with the dirty bathwater, but at what time do you have to clean the tub?
If you give me a minute, I'll see if I can find, and I don't know that I have it, but I can look to see if I have an email on it.
So the last meeting before the mayor and I got sworn in is when the agreement was approved. So we're like 6 years, because I remember it was the last meeting before we got sworn in, because I was upset, why didn't they wait? Because we were coming in with all new council. So it's 6.5 years. 7
For
years.
the CRA agreement?
Well, I just remember when Albert
permit.
Wika
The
came
permits.
in and did the whole thing. I mean, this has been going on a long, 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 long time.
Well, okay, if you're talking, there was the bigger project, and that was probably 6 years ago, involving the lot, the construction of a parking garage.
Hunter
and all-
Arms.
And the Hunter Arms, and there was that agreement in place. The residential structure, I don't remember how big it was going to be, but the large tower building that was going to be built.
15.
15 stories, it was gonna be
Okay.
a blade.
Okay, so there was that part, and that was going back 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I think we've really only been working on this piece related to the CRA participating and or assisting with the certain parts of the hotel project for probably since the middle of 2021. I'm looking at my draft agreements, and the earliest draft I have of an agreement is January of 2022.
So the last inspection was approved on June 1st of 2022. Then the permit expired on December 1st of 2022, and then Bob gave an extension. That's all I got so far.
But Council, you're correct.
This
the
has been,
city-
this has been going a long
the-
time.
Exactly. The city and
19.
the city and the CRA have been quote unquote dancing with this project for a long time.
So will you be having a meeting with him before our next CRA meeting?
The plan was next week.
It's on the calendar.
Yeah, the plan was for next week. The permit was in 2019 because I sent it to Mr. Fletcher. I'm glad I emailed it to you.
Well, I think before we make a decision, I'd certainly like to see us wait until the May meetings, after you've had the opportunity to lay out to him the seriousness of where we're at, and we're ready to just walk away from the whole thing and start whatever process we have to do to reclaim the building. And I think you need to explain that.
Well, we can't,
can't
it's
reclaim
not,
the
it's not the building.
I understand, but we
so-
can, but he'll end up with fines and all that stuff. He'll end up losing the building.
Yes.
So, Mr. Urban?
Are there options? You said he filed for a permit extension in December,
Yes, and Bob made it clear that this was the last extension he would get.
the last extension.
But he gets to keep his permit alive, however, if he
If he
continues to
passes
do
an
works and
inspection.
passes inspection.
Right. So.
And they've been working on the roof. I've seen them this week.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if we did walk away from this, I don't think it's gonna sit empty. I mean, I know there's been interest in people who have wanted to purchase that property and actually do something with it, and all the time that it sat there with no progress, so, like Member Fletcher said too, there's a lot of businesses in the CRA who would love to have the assistance, as well, and I just feel like we have not seen any good faith from this owner, and just beyond frustrating, so.
To be honest, I also did ask him if we could buy it, so you know, and he told me he was not interested.
Member Matheny, your light's on.
Yes, since we seem to have a mixed bag here, I'd say you need to come with a contract to the next board meeting, or sounds like there's consequences. You know, and you can tell Mr. Leka that, and if he can't work it out, he can't, whatever, they don't agree, I mean, I know I'm frustrated, and I even reached out to the city manager, like, are we, what's happening at this meeting? What are we gonna, be embroiled in this, a long emotional conversation? But I've met with the representative as well, and, I did tell him it's not the city's responsibility to have an economically viable project for him. But again, I'm not speaking with the owner, I'm speaking with the representative, so that's why I think you need to speak with the owner. But I'd be willing to say, come to the next meeting if we have the May 4th, I think you said, or we're done talking about it.
So to be clear, because I've worked a little bit with them, only if I have come to an agreement I can recommend, or regardless, he's on the agenda.
Mr. Loading?
Personally, I think it's one that you and Mr. Manzares are supporting, or don't bring it.
I think my light's on from before, but
Okay.
I did have a thought, but it just flew.
So do you have a direction, a fairly vague direction of how to go?
No, because it's a short period of time. So is the direction that we come forward if it's an agreement that we can recommend? Or regardless, we bring something, which,
We'll have to
what
make a
he's
decision
asking
one way or
forward?
the other.
I'm sorry?
I
We'll
think
ha-
I
we'll
was
know what the
proposing it's
opportunity
dead,
is.
like, it's dead. If you don't come with an agreement that you two can
Well, I think
recommend, and then we'll have a conversation.
to short circuit it maybe a little so we can get some feel, because we obviously need some direction in this. The original agreement was for the CRA to contribute $300,000 under a plan that they would do the work, we would reimburse them as the work was provided or pay their contractor. They would sign off on a security agreement and a promissory note, and they would have certain milestones to complete the construction and occupancy of the building. And then the building would continue as a hotel for a certain period of time. And if they didn't meet any of those dates, then the city, the amount that the CRA paid would be reimbursed, and there would be a security agreement and a promissory note to be able to address that. Ironically, it was a very similar agreement that we did with the VFW, because remember, you fronted, the CRA fronted the work for the VFW also. You know, they just got it done. So, but it was a similar format on it. That was the original version. That's what staff and the prior city manager were willing to initially go with. And so with those confines,
Did you say we're reimbursing or we're fronting?
in that agreement, it was
Well,
fronted.
the one
'cause
you're,
that-
the one you're talking with him about.
Well, that's what she's anticipating they're gonna come back and ask.
I would not front the money,
Okay?
period.
Okay, so-
That's my personal opinion.
Can I reimburse him for the roof?
It's already done?
That's what was the original 300,000 was roof.
If we're looking for head nods, I'm not in agreement. I thought the last time this was done, I don't know why you're even entertaining it. That's where I'm at.
So, because I got to count to four. Can you like thumbs up, thumbs down here?
Well-
If I,
Well, tell us what you're proposing.
I guess what the direction is, do you want, Mrs. Miller and I are scheduled to meet, or we're gonna meet with Mr. Lecca and talk about this. And do you want us to have that meeting and bring something back, or is there anything that the owner of that hotel can do for where you'd be comfortable providing him funds from the CRA budget? And if the answer is no, then that's a pretty simple answer for us to give him. But we can't set forth the parameters of it right now.
Well, here's what frustrates me. We're just gonna, let's just say, no, we're done, we're finished. It's gonna get tied up in legalities, and it's gonna sit there for years. I promise you, it'll sit there for years. Let's hear the proposal, let's see what he's got. We don't know what we know until we know what we know. And so I'd say let her negotiate. She's heard our frustration. Share our frustration, come back, where's the proposal? We gotta hear it, we gotta prove it. And let's see where we go. But I just think it's, to just say we're washing our hands tonight is not a wise direction. And I'm frustrated with it just as much as everybody is.
Ditto. I'm with you on that.
Can I have your support on that? Let them bring back a recommendation?
The question I would have is how many hours are spent in the administration already by doing this? You know, I have 5 kids and I've got grandkids, and, you know, don't eat the cookie. Don't eat the cookie. After a while, when you take the cookie away, then they want more cookies. And I'm sorry I've dumbed it down that way, but I don't mind anybody talking in negotiation. My business has always been negotiating. I've been walking outdoors before and turned around to renegotiate, because I would never let it go. But we're wasting valuable people's time and money by you wasting your time and getting that same result. And I understand legalities, I understand the building. It's been under construction for 8, 9, 10 years, whatever. And if it goes to litigation, it's gonna be 3 or 4 more years. But if it goes to us letting him string us along, or whoever the owner is, which I don't know and I'd never met with, then it can be another 8 years, and we're sitting here having the same conversation with hundreds of thousands of administration dollars spent with trying to talk to these guys, with these folks talking to them, and you guys talking to them. So that's just my only opinion on this. When's it stop? When's it over? When's the deadline's hard? You know, I'm always in negotiations. I've been my whole life. And if there's a sliver of chance, I'll go for it. But there's gotta be deadlines. There's gotta be service agreements. There's gotta be, no, this is, the city manager, the city attorney said, well, this is your last permit. This is your last permit. How many times have they said that?
Mr. Manzares.
Well, I didn't issue the permit.
No, I didn't say, I'm sorry, it's an open conversation. I apologize if it came that way. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say, and I appreciate the frustration with it, but having been city attorney here for 25 years, we've been involved in the restoration of that building since the very first day that we became city attorney. That's how long this project has been going on.
Are you serious?
Yes.
But not the same owner.
No,
not
no,
with the owner.
and that was my
Oh,
point.
I know, as a private
There's been-
sector, I bid on it.
There was a bid, there was an auction, the city actually bid on it also, at that time to try to acquire the building. There's been 4, maybe 3 or 4 different owners. There was a period of time when the first floor was open for a little while, and the back room was open there for a little while, maybe about 15 years ago.
Remember it, yeah.
I've attended weddings there
Right.
recently.
I don't
Not
think-
recently, I'm sorry. What,
I don't think
10 years ago?
I don't think the rooms and the upstairs have ever been reoccupied in years. Maybe since the early 2000s, there was some it was used as kind of a boarding house. But so I guess my point is, there's already been a ton of work and administratively put on this to get this done, and I think and I would probably get Internet support on that. Part of the reason why is because this is an extremely unique building in an extremely unique location. It's the middle focal point of the downtown area, so that's why that's always been the direction of every council and every CRA board that's ever looked at that, is that this building and this project is much more unique than anything else in the city's CRA area. And that's why there's been a lot of effort on it. And so historically, though, it has been going on a long time to get it open and operating. And we wish, Mr. Gilbert, you had bought it.
Mr. Irvin.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell mentioned that it would be tied up in legalities. What type of litigation would we be in if we decided
Not
to
us.
walk away? Oh, okay.
Well, I don't think, the city hasn't done anything to be brought up into litigation. There was some accusations that the city was dragged in, which in my mind were completely unfounded, related to the roofing contractor and the inspection process, but that, not surprisingly, went away. Because the city shouldn't have been involved at the beginning. I do believe with any project like this, there's likely debt on that building. If it gets to that point and there isn't a buyer that's willing to absorb that, then the end result becomes litigation.
He doesn't, according to him, there's no debt on it right now because he wasn't able originally to go that route.
So just because of what you said about the amount of time and effort that's been put forth by staff, and Mr. Blackwell is a very level-headed guy that I believe is also as equally frustrated with this. I feel like we've given them chances over and over and over again to negotiate a deal, but because of the amount of effort that was put forth by staff, if they're willing to talk and come to the next meeting with something, I'm willing for that to be the very last straw to see if there's something that they have that we can agree on, but I think the roof should be a good faith, that should be something that just proves it to us that they're willing to keep moving forward on it. That, yeah, I don't know. It's a very frustrating situation, and just want it to move forward. That's all.
Again, I'm just saying, let's let her bring back a recommendation next month and then go from there.
I think I have 3.
Enough.
Okay, there's 4. So I
Are we in
believe.
agreement? Can I have 4 people? 2? You got 4.
I got 4.
Let's move on. Do we have any members update? Mr. Loading, do you have anything?
I do not.
Mr. Fletcher, do you have anything?
I have nothing to see.
Mr. Gilbert?
Believe it or not, no.
Mr. Urban?
I just want to say I really appreciate Mr. Gilbert's euphemisms, the cookies in the cookie jar and everything. That's all. Thank you.
Member Matheny?
I don't have anything.
And Mr. Blackwell doesn't have anything. Do we have any public comment? If not, we have some information for you. An FRA annual conference will be held this year, October the 24th through the 27th at Ponte Verde. Is that correct? How to pronounce that?
You
Do you have anything you want to say about that?
I just wanted to advise the board, if they are interested in attending, if you could let staff know, just so we can start planning ahead.
If you've never been to an FRA conference, they are very educational, very helpful, as you see what has actually been done in other cities and gives you a lot of creative ideas. And so let her know if you're interested in possibly attending that conference.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity last year. Several board members went with me. We attended a lot of the same sessions and sometimes not the same session, and came back very excited with ideas. I highly recommend if you can make the time. I don't know if there's a city council meeting that week, which if so, we can adjust the schedule. Looking really quick, if there's enough members that want to go.
Full disclosure, as a private citizen, I've produced that event for over 20 years, and it's a great event.
Well, now you can come sit
I
in the
know, on other
sessions.
side.
Yeah, there's
Won't
a
be the
council meeting on the
background. I get a
26th.
seat.
There is a council meeting on the 26th, so definitely we'll need to know with plenty of notice if how many may want to go.
Okay.
I would like to go.
2,
I would be interested in going.
3.
I would like
4.
to go.
Okay, thank you. That was 4.
When is our next CRA meeting?
I think we're going to probably
4th.
aim for May 4th, but I also need to look at calendars so that, make sure that Mr. Manzares and I have enough time to try to finalize an agreement.
We have plenty of direction to rock and roll negotiations.
All right.
The
So
council board.
there will be a meeting in May, and she will notify us as to when it's convenient for everyone. There are no other items on our agenda. With that, we will be adjourned. Thank you so much for
I'm going to
sharing your frustrations with us.